Guys, we're back with another episode. Today is something, to me, it's a little bit different. I'm excited about this. I'm actually a nervous wreck. It took me a minute to get things done and to get everything set up, but the special guest we got today, Brother Thomas Brown. Thomas Brown, he's actually a magistrate. We're going to get a little bit of knowledge on what the role of a magistrate is, get a little bit of knowledge on kind of their duties and what their job to do is, I guess you would say, and maybe a little knowledge also on as far as how a bond's set. You know what I mean? I think that's a lot of when I've asked a couple of friends, like, what's some things I can ask, and they're like, we want to know this. So just jump right into it, brother. We're gonna Thomas Brown, if you don't mind, my man, go ahead and give us kind of your background.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised here in the area. You know, my dad was a magistrate for 27 years, and then became the clerk of court. I went to Limestone College down in Gaffney, played baseball down there, got a degree in business, and I know one of the things we talked about a little bit was how you become a magistrate. Really, the only requirement is to have a 4-year degree. Okay. And then you apply for it just like you would any other job with the state of North Carolina, and the clerk of court nominates you to the Chief Superior Court Judge. Chief Superior Court Judge is the one that appoints you. So we're appointed, we're not elected.
Okay. That's cool. I mean, that sums everything up there. I mean, as far as that, what you as a magistrate, like what's your day-to-day duties? Yeah. So, at least where I'm at, we're obviously at the jail. Let me back up a step. We have criminal magistrates and civil magistrates. Okay. We've in our county, we got 15 criminal magistrates and 2 civil magistrates. The 2 civil magistrates, they're in the courthouse during the regular court times, and they're doing first appearance and small claims court. Okay. And then the rest of us are down at the jail, setting bonds. When you get arrested, you come to jail. We do set bonds. We issue arrest warrants to police that come in, present facts of cases and that sort of stuff. We can do weddings. We issue search warrants in certain scenarios. In the majority of scenarios, we can issue search warrants. There are some specific scenarios where we're not able to issue that. Okay. The public's also able to come in and take out criminal summons without getting the police involved, essentially, but the difference between kind of a warrant and a criminal summons, there, somebody's going to show up, say, hey, be in court at this time. It's kind of like getting a ticket. Right. And warrant, you're getting arrested and you're coming to jail and you're coming to see one of us in person. Right. So, yeah. Awesome. How many years you been a magistrate?
So it'll be 13 in June.
Awesome.
So, yep.
You like it? You enjoy it?
I do. I enjoy it a lot. Our schedule in our county is kind of 7 days on, 7 days off. It really allows for time to do other things, and keep the family life, able to be not overrun by kind of that's serious of a job. Because
it definitely can be serious, as far as like mental health. You definitely don't want to take that home with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing I even tell the guys that's bondsmen. Do you talk about this all the time? I'm sure your wife gets tired of it. I'm sure your kids even know the business by now. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but when you bring the drama and, I'm sure you see a lot of things, you know what I mean? And when you see that, that kind of weighs on you. How do you think, as far as your public perspective, or how do you think that people view magistrates?
I would hope that it's on an individual basis,
right?
How you deal with that person, the magistrate that you're dealing with. Not all the magistrates in the state of North Carolina are terrible, or anything like that. Because I don't think that's fair to do that to anybody,
right?
Not even just magistrates, anybody, bondsmen, or
for sure,
whoever.
Absolutely.
There's been some stories recently of magistrates in Mecklenburg County that have made poor decisions. But that's them making poor decisions. Right. That's not all of us.
Doesn't speak for all y'all.
Yeah. Do I think that there's probably in general, negative perception of magistrates? Probably because of that. Because of some of those. The only stories you hear are negative stories.
For sure.
If I'm doing my job exactly how I'm supposed to, you don't know who I am for the most part.
Right.
You know, it's when I mess something up and you know, or do something stupid, or you know, just that's when you hear my name.
Right.
You know,
for sure.
it's kind of like a referee in a basketball game. Listen, I don't want to. I'm not trying to change the game. You don't need to know who I am. You know, I mean, I don't mind speaking to anybody, but you know, it's yeah, it's not. Yeah.
To me, it's what you're bringing to me. If you're bringing some negative energy and you're all high tempo, of course, that's kind of how you're going to get out of me as well, you know, because I got to match that energy usually. And I mean, it all depends. If I'm working, for sure, but if I'm at home, I don't even got the time, for sure. But now, as far as like a bond, I know that's what everybody, they've been waiting for me to ask, you know. How is a bond set? Is it based off, is it a scale? Is it based off the charge, or is it based off feelings?
You're getting into this early. I thought we were going to save this for like the last topic here, you know, keep them coming back. But no, so there are counties that have a bond schedule. If you commit larceny, it's this bond. There's no other factors factored in. I think the majority of the counties, and I know I can speak for my county, we take it kind of on a case-by-case basis. What's your criminal history? Well, first of all, we'll start with what's the situation and what's the crime that you've committed. What's your interaction with the police?
Right.
We take that into account. You know, are you polite and cooperative? You know, are you a butthole and, you know, they have to, you know, fight you and take you down? You know, I mean, bond is not a punishment. Bond is to ensure your appearance in court, but it's also to protect the citizens of the county that you're in.
Exactly.
So there are factors that come into play. So again, we look at your criminal history. We look at how you were with the officers, what kind of crimes you've committed. Along with that, there's some new policies that North Carolina has come out with in October of 2023, for instance. Since then, if you've been charged with a crime and released on pretrial release, whether it's unsecured bond, secured bond, written promise to appear, it doesn't matter, and you get arrested for something else, I'm required to hold you for 48 hours or until you can see a district court judge, no matter what.
When a bond is set, let's just say that this is one thing I have trouble a little bit, and I know I'm going to probably get the rat for this, and I'll hear it on certain individuals. If an individual is caught with DWI or DUI, I've known multiple times where, depending on the individual, they didn't even spend one night in jail. They didn't have to have a bond. They just get out on a written promise.
Yeah.
You know, that's the unsecured bond, which is the people here in North Carolina that's citizen, you know, that lives here. That's their tax dollars.
Yeah.
No one's responsible for them. Nobody's really reliable. We just kind of, the officers will catch up to them when they catch up to them. You know, at least with a bondsman, they're responsible for them. They're, you know, liable for them. They got to show up. If not, we pay the whole bond.
Yeah.
You know, so as far as like they've been drunk and they blew, to me, that was a big risk. It wasn't just your life. It was another individual's life that you could have taken. You know what I mean?
I absolutely agree with you. And I will just preface this with, in general, starting out for a DWI, because I work second shift. I deal with a lot of DWIs.
Right.
In general, I kind of start at unsecured bond, hold until blood alcohol concentration is below 0.04 or until a sober adult can come and take responsibility.
Right.
For. Now, as I'm going through your history, you've got 3 of them before. Yeah, you're not learning. This wasn't a mistake. You know, sometimes
it's a decision. You know,
yes, this is a constant. This is, you know, a pattern
for sure.
You know, but when it is kind of a one-off, I made a mistake.
Right.
I went
understand
to dinner.
that.
I had, you know, 4 glasses of wine. I didn't think I was, you know, that is where you got to have some common sense.
Right. For sure.
Being a magistrate is a lot about common sense. And I don't know all the laws, but I know where to find the answer to all the laws.
Right.
You know, that's kind of the thing that when I started, like, I don't know, I can't remember if I said this before. My dad was a magistrate for 27 years. He told me when I started, you're not going to know all the answers, but know where to find them.
Exactly.
Know what you know and know what you don't know, and figure out what you don't know.
But always have a resource to find the answer if you need it, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I become a PI. My wife, she's a PI. You know, that's defined, because there's parts of it you can assume something all day long, but if it ain't facts and it ain't,
let's go read it. Let's go read in the Red Book. You know, the North Carolina General Statutes. Here it is, right here. You know,
bingo.
You know.
Let's see. How do you manage cases that involve like sensitive issues like family?
So it again, going back to that kind of common sense thing,
right?
You know, it's got to be just for instance, if I have friends come in, we always have at least 2 magistrates in our magistrate's office at all time. So let's say a police officer arrests a friend.
Right.
I'm going to kind of recuse myself or give my coworker the opportunity. I need you to do this one because I know this person.
Right.
Even though I'm 100% sure I could be fair and impartial, and if I needed to be, let's just avoid any appearance of impropriety, you know, that might be there. And sensitive issues are sensitive issues, you know, and you just kind of gotta take it. You know, you don't hold on to it. I've had triple murderers sitting in front of me before, and I'm like, how in the world could you have done that?
Right after you talking to them, it's like, you did that?
Yeah, you know, and so I think part of it too is realizing that every person is a person and treating them like a person. And like you said earlier, you know, I'm going to match your energy. If you're going to be a-hole to me, I'm going to probably be an a-hole back to you.
Right.
But if we're cordial and, you know, we can speak to each other, and, you know, I got no problem with that, because everybody makes bad decisions.
Exactly.
I mean, everybody makes poor decisions.
We're human. I mean.
Yeah. You know, we're all human. We all fail. We all sin. We all, you know, it is what it is, you know, so just living with a little bit of grace and giving some grace, you know, when it's necessary or when it's due.
Right.
You know.
How do you feel? I actually like this one, when the media gets involved.
So,
does it make things harder on your, just like, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly does. You know, it's certainly, you know, back when we were having the riots and stuff, and we had them down in Gastonia and everything like that, and they were walking the streets and that sort of stuff, you know, the news coverage and all that sort of stuff, like, it made it hard to make a human decision. And it made it hard to be like, this is...
You made it hard to make a common sense.
Yeah, exactly. Like, realistically, what they're doing is not that bad.
Right.
You know, but the media's picked it up, and, you know, or either way, you know, whichever way, you know, listen, I believe in looking at people's souls, not, you know, judging them, you know, by their actions. You know, I mean, that's like we've talked about before. People make mistakes, you know.
And you got to remember that in the job that you have, and, you know, it's same here. I've had people, why did you get them out? I've even had preachers come up and say, you know, the job that you do is, you know, it's a little different. And my thing is, my answer to that is what you and I'm not calling out, you know, a certain preacher at all. You know, I love my church, but there's some that wouldn't even allow some of these people to come in there at all and sit. And that's, you know, I'm no preacher, and I don't, you know, I sin, and I'm not perfect at all, you know. So, but at the same time, like you just said, they're human.
Yeah. And
I'd meet them where they're at, and I'd do a little bit of research on them, and if I feel like they have a good soul somewhat, it's just, they just wasn't brought up right. You know, they don't know the things that's 100% right and wrong, you know? And I've had buddies the same way. It's like, dude, you wasn't thinking, well, That's just how I was raised, and that can't be your excuse every time.
Yeah.
You know, you learn from it.
Yep.
So I mean, that's
well, and that goes back to some of the bond situations that we were talking about. Look, I'm going to look at your criminal history. I've got everything you've ever done.
Right.
Any interaction you've ever had with the police, I've got record of it. So I can see if, at 16 you got picked up for underage drinking or what, whatever.
Right.
And you can see a pattern, with a lot of people. I know some of the stuff you talk about is addicts and that sort of stuff.
Right.
And you can see a pattern when it comes to that sort of stuff of maybe even, all right, for 2 years they were arrested 4 or 5 times for, drug possession. And then they got clean for 2 years,
right?
And then they relapsed, and you can see that progression in their criminal history, and it's just it's so sad for me to see that, And anytime you talk about addiction or anything like that, it getting over recovering is a daily choice that they have to that you have to make.
Every single day.
And I say I'm not, I haven't been an addictive person, so I'm not throwing it on, not trying to throw it on anybody. I'm just saying, my aunt runs a all-female rehab facility, faith-based, Christ-based, and that sort of stuff in Ramlow. And she's a recovering addict. And I mean, it's just from seeing, I think, that sort of stuff touches every person and every family, in every way, and I think it's just something, it's almost something that if it didn't sometimes feel taboo, it should be a joining support, situation for everybody.
For sure, especially when they broke down and they really want it. I mean, because there's going to come a time where it's kind of like a roller coaster ride. I've seen it. I'm not going to say which family member, but I got a couple family members of my own. It's hard to see because you knew how they once was, and they were, beautiful, or they were, a handsome person, and now they won't even take a bath, or they just don't care about life, you know. And to me, it's when that happens. I mean, there is a way of getting out, and when they want it, I mean, it's got to be there. You pray for that moment, and I know it ain't your decision.
Yep.
And I think that's what's wrong with some individuals. They just give up, but then you can't enable them,
Yeah.
So I mean,
it's a fine line there between being supportive but not being enabling.
Exactly.
And. That's until they're ready to lay it down and walk away. It doesn't matter how much anybody on the outside does.
Exactly.
But the continued prayers, I'm sure, are.
It definitely works.
Yeah.
For sure. Now you said it was your aunt.
Yeah.
Now I'm hoping that we can get her to come on the show.
I'm sure she'd love to come and talk to you.
And bring awareness and kind of tell what it's all about, because I know some places that you got to pay for it, some places you don't, some places when they say, well, there's a fee, they just don't fill out the paperwork, and it could be free. You know what I mean? You could get the help that you need.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'd love to have her on the show.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Line that up, I'm sure.
That'd be beautiful.
Yeah.
We kind of mentioned this a little bit, but as far as like your work and your life balance, does some people let that affect them? Does that affect you at all? I mean,
I really try to leave what happens at the office at the office. There's nothing I can do about it once I get home.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't change anything. Now, that's not to say I don't come home and tell my wife, you ain't gonna believe what happened at work today.
Right.
But I'm not dwelling on it. I'm not. I'm me personally. I'm able to make a decision about a bond, or make a decision about whether to issue a process, or make a decision. I've made that decision. I stand behind it. I'm done. I'm kind of done with it. You know what I mean? It's just, I'm able to compartmentalize. All right, it's work time. All right, it's time to go home and be with my wife and my kid. So.
That's how you got to be. I mean, that's even what I've told some of the people that work here. I mentioned that before. You can't take it home with you. It's just going to burn you out. It's going to be could be a terrible thing. What do you think the biggest misunderstanding is as far as being a magistrate?
I think one of them used to be that if you paid a bond in cash, it went in my pocket. Because it definitely don't. I can promise you that.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I've heard that one before. I've heard people go, "Oh, your bond set so high, you go get all that money in your pocket," or and I'm like, that don't come. You get it back as long as you don't miss any court dates. I mean, if you post it.
You got to also keep in mind, just because you have common sense, not everybody does.
That is
and
true.
You can't buy it on Amazon.
That is true. Yeah. Other than that, that maybe we're all kind of the same person, and we're certainly not.
Right.
Like I said, there's 17 magistrates in my county. We're all completely independent judicial officials. We make decisions. Now, we confer with each other on certain things, but
right.
The decision that I make, my coworker may not have agreed with, but it was my decision to make. So, we're kind of going to back that. I guess people thinking we're all just mean and,
right.
You just want to keep me in jail because I'm me,
You kind of have that DMV. When you go to DMV,
they dread it. And I will touch on this a little bit. One of the things that I try to do is when a defendant's in front of me, is I try to have compassion for their situation, because ultimately they're seeing me on one of their worst days of their life.
You're right.
They're arrested. They're in jail. This can't be one of their best days in life, I hope.
For sure.
So they may be upset and mad and disgruntled, and I understand that. Like, that's not hard to understand. I on my worst day, I'm upset and mad and disgruntled. It's
right,
just,
for sure.
So having some compassion goes a long way. A lot of times, so part of being a magistrate, and this is kind of going back and forth, and I'm kind of all over the place here, but we are the first, I call it, line of defense for the judicial branch.
Right.
We're the first person. We're the person you see when you've been out drinking all night, and you come to jail and you cuss me out because you're drunk, not
right.
because you have anything against me, but because you're drunk. So
you got caught.
Yeah, and you got caught. Yeah, and so I try to make sure, like, I don't hold anybody contempt of court that I know is visibly intoxicated.
Right.
Hey, listen, go sleep it off for 5, 6, 8 hours. Come back and talk to me. At that point, if you're going to be cussing me out and
you're
everything,
definitely getting a bond.
Then yeah, then we may hold you in contempt of court, and that's another power that we have, is we do have the power to hold you in contempt of court for up to 30 days.
Well, I mean, that's I guess you get the nickname judge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that's kind of what you are. I mean,
Yeah.
like you said, you're the first one that sees the individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that in my 13 years, I have given, I think, 4 contempt of courts. So once every 2 or 3, 4
right.
years, something like that. And it's got to be, because of the situation, I can just be like, officer, take him away.
Right.
I don't have to. It's not like a courtroom where everybody's up there and they're making a big show in front of everybody.
Right.
It's like it's us 3, me and him and the officer.
It's more like personal. That's how.
Yeah. It's like, just take.
He's
him away.
being personal to you, I guess you would say, for sure.
Yeah. So that's, and to be honest with you, that is something that I take very heavily to heart. Like, I don't want to take away your freedom. I don't want to say you can't go home for 30 days, because you've done something to drive me there, and I'm not just doing it, lightly, but at the same time, that's not, listen, I'm called a judge. I'm not the judge.
Right.
I'm not the person, I can't judge you for your actions.
Right.
That's not that's not fair, you know. So I try to be fair and even to everybody that I
mean,
if
some people, they hear like, oh, he's locked up for 30 days, but in 30 days you can lose a lot. You can lose your house, you lose your family. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's something to really, really think about before you would even go in front of someone and want to disrespect. Because at the same time, there's a reason why you're in front of them, and I will say some people get locked up for wrongful doings, you know. But when you're not, why make it even worse?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why even have to come to that? You know.
Yeah. And I will tell you, personally speaking, you speak to me with respect. I'm absolutely going to speak to you with respect, and I would say 99.9% of the magistrates out there are the same way.
Right.
You know. And
I mean, you will have one or two and you can see them. You know, and I have, you know, the 14 years that I've been doing, you know, bail bonds. Or I've been a bondsman. It's maybe one or two that's kind of like, wow, that's odd, you know. But at the same time, you don't know what they went through that day.
Yep.
You don't know what they had to see or hear or witness. You know what I mean? So that's what I also try to think of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got to be kind of open minded at the same time. I guess we're almost just about done. I know you got to get back to work. Can you tell us, and this might be a dumb question because this ain't on here neither, what's the difference between like federal and district and you know, charges like that? Can you kind of brief on that?
So there's essentially state charges and federal charges.
Right.
So, and then with the state, and to be honest with you, I don't know a whole lot about federal charges
right.
other than the U.S. government wants you for some reason.
Right.
With state charges, there's district court and superior court,
right.
obviously. Superior court is pretty much only felonies unless there's some aggravating factors in there.
Okay.
Where they're not going to... and then, you know, if you're in district court, you get ruled against, you can appeal to superior court. If you're in superior court, you get ruled against, you go to the state court of appeals, I think it is.
Okay, yep.
And then, I mean, you can keep fighting it all the way up to the state Supreme Court. And, you know, it's, I don't think it'd be cheap for attorney's fees or anything like
for
that.
Sure.
But, you know, it's one of those things that if you've been wrongly convicted, by all means, fight it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, listen, we're again, judges and juries and all, they're people. They're not perfect, you know, and all we can go off of is the information that we have.
Exactly.
You know? And, you know, the information we have are provided by, you know, whether for us, it's only by police officers.
Right.
You know, when you get to court and that sort of stuff, it's witnesses and, you know, police officers and there's certainly all sorts of other
right. That's PIs are hired and they went and digged and they might find something that's, you know, that's actually what happened in that, you know, the OJ trial that he had a really good PI and that's what got him out of all that.
Yeah.
But okay, that's good. I like that. Do you have any advice? I mean, you know, your aunt, she's in, you know, the rehab. So of course you've seen kind of, you said that she was an addict, you know, a long time ago. So, what's your advice for individuals that's kind of going through that?
This is going to be from someone that has not been in that position before.
Right.
So I can't say, hey, this is what worked for me or anything like that.
Right.
You know, from the outside looking in, prayer, you know, deep reflection, you know, on, is this where I want to be in my life?
Right.
You know, do I want to wake up every morning tied to that needle that's sticking out of my arm, or you know, to that straw that I'm snorting, you know, up my nose, you know? And I'm not saying that it's an easy decision to do, because it's not.
Right.
You know, I can't imagine having to make that decision, but it's a decision that if you can make every day, your life will change in numerous ways. And not only do you need the support of friends and family around, you need to look for things that you can believe in and have faith in. You know, for me, it's Christ and
right.
You know, that sort of stuff. For other people, it may be other things. And that's okay. You know, if it gets you to a better place,
Some people just need to stay busy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They need to find just something to do because they're bored. You know what I mean? The individual just came yesterday, that came on here, and he'll be, here soon. We'll share that as well. But it's like he said, sometimes I was just bored.
Yeah.
You can't just sit in these four walls, Yeah. I mean, I've never been, from me to you, I've never been an addict. I have smoked marijuana. I have done, other, I guess you would say, recreational drugs. Never meth, never heroin, never fentanyl. So I don't know what it's like to be actually, hooked on something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I feel for them.
Yeah.
And so when they say you don't know what it's like, you're exactly right.
But I don't claim to know what it's like.
But we've seen it.
Yeah.
And we've seen people that it's like, that just started on it, and they go downhill, and then you've seen people that's just been on it forever. But there's some I'm like, they'll never change. But again, I'm not the judge of that.
Yeah.
I pray for them to change, and they have. Has been, it's when you're on fentanyl and you're meth and you're on heroin and you're doing them 3 type of drugs, and you can beat that. Wow.
Yep.
But it ain't just a fight, just a 12 round. This right here is the rest of your life.
Yep.
Once you try that drug, that's why I call it the ultimate drug. It's a fight for the rest of your life.
Yep.
Well, Mr. Brown, brother, I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming on here, man. That's beautiful.
Me.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I actually talked about it, and that's what I was telling my nephew that's behind us back here. I said, wouldn't it be beautiful to get a magistrate and an officer to give their side of the story, or what they've been through, or even give us knowledge. You know what I mean? And it's all coming together.
That's right.
And it's because people like you,
who
and
yep. and I think what you would find is, if you were to reach out to people like this even more, there's plenty of people that would be willing to speak with you in that sort.
That's what I want, man. Yeah. Just like with your aunt, she can give us knowledge and what she's seen, and bring hope. You know what I mean? That's the main thing. And again, I know everybody wants to see me, picking people up, and that's entertainment. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I want to find a solution, what we can do to help. Yeah. Give you some knowledge, and give the next individual something, a stepping stone. Look, if it worked for them, I'm all tongue tied.
Yeah.
If it worked for them, it could. Why don't you just try it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the first step is maybe open up that Bible and get to know our Father.
Yep.
Because I tell you, when I went through some things, that's what helped me.
Yeah.
And it gets your mind off of all that other stuff.
Yep.
My brother, thank you. I appreciate you much. If you don't mind, before you leave, I want to say a little prayer. I do that with everybody.
Absolutely.
I think it's really our duty to do this, Just bow our head real quick. Yep. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you. Thank you for bringing Mr. Brown here on, Magistrate Judge Brown here on the show, and giving us a little bit of knowledge. I mean, this helps out a lot, and I hope this has, helped out the viewers as well. Just like he said, you can't judge a book by its cover, God. You made us, and you designed us, and you know who we are, God. And at the end of the day, anybody can change. Anybody can, change their ways, God. They just got to come to you, Father. So I want to thank you for having individuals like, Mr. Brown, that has a big role, and he has the power to do bad, but he doesn't. He chooses to do good, God. So, and he looks at individuals where they at, and he meet them where they're at, God. So thank you for people like him. And Lord Father, I ask you to if somebody might be watching this, I ask for you to touch them, God, and come into their life, and let them see your face, because that's all it took for me. So thank you, Lord Father. Thank you for all you do. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Brother, thank you again. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
I hope you don't get fired.
I think I'll be okay. I didn't share too many secrets.
Hey, guys, again, thank you for viewing. If you haven't liked, subscribed, all that good stuff. Again, I'm new to this. I mean, you should see this setup. It took me like 20 minutes to get this thing set up. But, yeah, do that. Just like, subscribe, share. And if I've ever bonded you out, if you're a law enforcement officer, a judge, a magistrate, a lawyer, hey, reach out to me. Let's help individuals that are actually needing the help. So thank you again. This is Bell Culture. I'll see y'all next week. Peace.